play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me, a man who magically disappears every time the check comes to the table, the Houdini of hockey, the commissioner of the United States Hockey League, my friend and co-host, Bill Robertson.
That was one of the best introductions I've ever heard.
Billy, it's been a while since we've done a show. It's great to see you again.
You too, Patrick. Yeah. It's great to be back. And what a show we have for you today for our viewers. This is what I would say is a unique show for a lot of reasons. We have the Amazing Hondo. He's a teacher, educator, athlete, magician, auctioneer, and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Welcome to the show, Hondo.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
It's great to see you again. The last time I saw you, you were grading papers at Cretin High School, the calculus that I didn't pass, but I do remember you as a very unique and caring teacher at Cretin High School. And I think the first question I want to ask you in regards to your career is, what got you out of teaching and into this industry of magic and auctioneering versus being a teacher?
Well, so the quick answer to that is I took up magic when I was about 16, 17, learned my first card trick from a classmate at a poker party for Cretin, and so I moonlighted doing magic while going to college, and I did it while I was teaching. So I was doing magic on the side. I did it in the classroom to get the kids' attention. Right around when I was 31 or 2 years old, I got asked to go give a talk in San Francisco for a national math teachers convention. And I had developed a topic called Mathamagic. So I got up in front of about 400 people at this national convention, scared to death, and it went over great. And on the airplane ride coming home from that gig, I thought to myself, I think I may be able to make a go of this. And I thought, well, you got to try. So I said, well, I'm just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to teaching. And here I am doing it full time, approaching my 39th year or something like that.
Wow.
But it never could have happened had I not been a teacher, because teaching develops speaking skills, and it gives you an understanding of human behavior and engagement. And I always figured if I can keep 35 kids in a math class engaged, it shouldn't be too difficult to do so with magic in front of a group. So I wasn't too worried about my ability to succeed as a performer, but it was the business side. I never took a business class. So then you go, how are you going to make a living at it? But that's a whole other story.
Yes.
You know, Hondo, you mentioned that you teaching in the classroom, or magic in the classroom.
Right.
When did that begin to appear, and how did the kids react to magic as part of their math curriculum?
So I grew up watching Johnny Carson in high school, and he had the monologue. And I thought as a teacher, if I could do a 5-minute monologue at every class, before every class, and it didn't have to be magic, sometimes it was, but not always. My theory was you can't start teaching until you get the attention of everybody. You're better off wasting, you're not really wasting, but taking 5 minutes to get them focused. Now you get more out of the remaining minutes when you're teaching. So I always just thought, whatever it takes to get them with me. And so I have so much repertoire that I could do a card trick, I could do a mind reading thing, I could do a math trick. And it was fun, it was fun. And I wanted kids to look forward to coming to my class. Did you?
Yes, I did. I also remember a day we had a quiz of some sort, and it was the same day that the Yankees were playing the Red Sox in 1978 in the playoffs. It was a one-game playoff, and I asked you if we could watch that game. It was the Bucky Dent home run game, and it was a beautiful day in New England, but it was also a beautiful day outside, and I didn't have the energy to want to take your calculus quiz on that day, and you said, that's a great idea, but I think we're going to have to take the quiz today.
I don't know how we could have watched the game back then.
That's true. So you'd have to roll in the television. I know if I asked you out in the hallway or something, but
Right.
you smiled because you understood what I
I
meant.
probably wanted to watch it with you.
Well, talk about a little bit about teaching. Growing up, we honored teachers and we respected teachers, and it's changed a bit. What do you think about the teaching profession today? Could you do what you did today as you did it back in the late 70s at Cretin High School?
Well, my initial answer would be I don't see why not, but my main concern would be the cell phone. We didn't have them. Now they do. And kids are doing this all day long. So I would have to establish that those have to be put away for the class. Because my whole success as a teacher hinged upon connection and having a captive audience, which is the same as a presenter. But the only way you're going to get captive audience is if, number one, you got to be compelling and interesting, and there's got to be something in it for them. So you're as a teacher, you're a salesperson. You have to sell the student on why they should be paying attention to you. And we've all had good and poor teachers in our day, and I happen to be lucky enough to learn from the good ones. And you learn what not to do and you learn what to do. But I think I could. I make guest appearances in classrooms a lot. I've still got friends teaching, some still at Cretin, Durham Hall, and so I make guest appearances. But I do find that kids, I had that Johnny Carson style, that back and forth. I'd get inside of people's heads and get back and forth. Kids today aren't so much into that, and I'm wondering if it's because their teachers aren't doing it, or if they're just. Well, it's like I see a fog over some of their faces, and I'm like, I want to wake up what's going on in here. But I wanted to get the brain clicking, and I think I did an okay job of that.
You did.
Because I get bored with myself, and if I get bored with myself, we lose, because I need to feel like I'm interesting, and I have to. I always said, if I was sitting out there, would I pay attention to me? And because I'm a tough critic, so I said, well, if you're good enough to keep yourself engaged, maybe you can keep the other people engaged.
You played youth baseball.
I did.
With Paul Molitor. You played on a Winona State basketball team that went to 2 national championships. And by the way, I was a big fan of that team. I grew up in Winona, so I remember.
The Warriors.
Yeah. Gus Johnson and Roscoe Young,
yes.
And Herschel Lewis.
I'll see Roscoe this coming weekend. We're honoring our coach who passed away. We're having a memorial service in Winona. So,
yeah, that was a special team to me because my father would take me to those games. And
I was the guy before the game at center court with 2 basketballs doing magic, dribbling and all kinds of funky things, because I wasn't quite good enough to get playing time during the games. So I got mine in before the game.
Well, so sports has obviously been important in your life, and in your career as a magician,
right.
You've carved out a bit of a niche with sports,
right.
Performing at the World Series and All-Star games, dozens of
right.
PGA tournaments. What was it about sports that really you thought that you could make a living entertaining at sporting events?
So when I said earlier that I wasn't as much concerned about the magic as I was the business, I made a very easy decision when I went full time. I said, I got to get in front of business people, because business people have budgets for their company functions. So then I thought, well, how am I going to get to know the business community? And I thought, well, sports, and as you know, sports marketing, companies sponsor sports. So if I can get into sports events, I'm going to have exposure to corporate people who have access to meetings and trade shows and conferences, and they'll bring me into those. And that was the game plan. And I started out in the golf world. I went down to Chicago in '84 or '85 and performed at the Western Open. That led to them bringing me back for a few years. And when the World Series came to the Twin Cities in '87, I was fortunate enough to be able to work the main party of the gala that they had. And then I did so again in '91, and in '85 I worked the All-Star game, and I just got lucky. I got lucky that I could perform where my true interest lay, because I love sports. I still play, and so I thought, if I can do my thing at those functions, there's not much cooler than that. I thought that'd be great. So you get to meet, I was performing at the All-Star game, and Dave Winfield, my former teammate from American Legion Ball, Attucks Brooks, St. Paul, he walks in, and I'm about to say, hey, that's Dave. I had a crowd watching me. I was about to say, hey, this is Dave Winfield. I played ball with him. He beats me to the punch, and he says to this crowd, hey, that's my man Hondo doing the magic. I played ball with him. And I thought, I'm supposed to be the guy saying that to you, Dave.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about magic with a message and what that means and how that differs for you as a magician.
So when you get into magic as a kid and you buy a trick, it comes with instructions. And with those instructions is something called patter, P-A-T-T-E-R. It's the language you're supposed to speak when you're doing the trick. The hokiest thing you'll ever read is patter for a trick, right? So I thought, I can't say what they're telling me to say. I got to come up with my own. So I decided that I would create my own story to go with the trick, whatever the trick was. And then I started thinking about teaching and, you know, being in front of students and communicating messages. And then I thought, well, why don't I make my patter fit the function every time? And I said, well, okay, that's a message. Well, how do I get the message? Well, I interview the client, I give them a pre-event questionnaire, I learn all about their culture, their values, their mission, their purpose, their people. They give me names of 6 to 10 audience members that could be fun to engage in the program. So I do this crash homework course. I mean, hours. I'll put hours of prep into something that maybe only lasts 30 to 60 minutes in performance. But that gives me the confidence that I will speak their language. So the magic with a message is it's magic, but it's more. I mean, I don't like people, sometimes people say, oh, we saw a magician, it was terrible, he offended the crowd and all that stuff. So I believe the message is as important as the magic because it gives them a reason to book me over some generic guy because there's a lot of guys that do what I do. And I always used to tell the students, if you want to be successful, and I say this at my events, I said, customers can always find someone else who does what you do, but they can never find someone else that is you and does it the way you do it. So make the way you do whatever you do compelling enough that you're the guy they want. And that's to me, your personal branding. And so Magic with a Message just became a nice tagline. My first tagline was, Amazing Hondo, have tricks will travel. That was my first one, because I wanted to go places. And now I've gone places.
Hondo, we are just coming out of a pandemic that lasted about 3 years. It was impossible for people to meet in person. It was impossible for you to entertain in person. How did you adapt your show, considering you couldn't be out in front of your clients?
So I fancy myself an amateur videographer, and I'm fascinated by what people in the back room do to make this happen with video. I have a spare bedroom in my home upstairs. I converted the whole thing into a Zoom studio. I got 4 cameras on tripods. I got a switcher so I can actually have what I did. I did Zoom shows, and I could actually do a multi-camera, and it was exciting. It was fun. I kind of enjoy being on camera, and it's just fun to do. And so I reached out to my clientele, and I got booked to do a whole bunch of those. In fact, you and I, in the Capitol Club, when Tom Lehman was your guest, he did a Zoom, and I got to do a little magic to help introduce him in my Zoom studio. And so that's what I did. And you know what else I did? I studied. I went on YouTube, and I subscribed to some people in my profession who teach, who are really good, and I watched their tutorials, and I became a 16-year-old kid again, and I learned a whole lot of new stuff, which was really fun because you got nothing else to do. But yeah, so the bookings were down, but you know, I had enough going on, and I also did some. I learned that I could do a pre-event promotional video for a gig where I would put their branding in my virtual background, and I would do a 1 minute or 2 minute tease that they could then send out to their audience ahead of time to build enthusiasm for it. So I just accepted the pandemic as something, the world's shut down, but just because they shut down, I don't have to shut down.
But was it a little bit difficult, though, when you couldn't get that immediate feedback? You couldn't get the applause?
Right. It's a whole different performance I had to come up with, because you can't get the audience engagement. So what you have to do is you pick a person in the virtual audience, and if you're doing a trick with them, you got your camera on you got them on one screen, you on the other screen, and it's almost like you're having it's not really like a performance as much as a conversation with a little magic and let people respond. But it's so different, because I love the vibe of an audience laughing and getting back and forth, and that's tough on virtual.
Well, you've done hundreds, thousands of shows. He and I have both been in an audience where you've done your magic and engaged the crowd. So I think it's amazing, no pun intended, for what you do. But I would say this, for you have to have thought about over time. You've been in so many different places. You've met so many different people. Are there one or two shows that you've done that you say, "No, I did it all really well. I got to meet so and so celebrities, and it's like, really, I could do this for free because it was so engaging"?
Well, before I answer that, I could do this for free. That's another one of my Hondoisms. I always say the perfect career for anybody is the one you would do for free if you didn't have to make money, right? You got to do something. You got to make a contribution to the world in some fashion. Whatever that number one on your list is, if you could do that and still make a living, and that's like, I do this for free a lot. I mean, I do a lot of stuff that way and impromptu. But to answer your question, had to be Muhammad Ali. When I first got the call from local author Harvey McKay 25 years ago, he says, I got Muhammad Ali coming to town for a book signing. We got a 5-hour window in the afternoon. We got to keep him occupied. He loves magic. Can you come and do that? I said, sure. But he says, before I book you, he says, is it true what they say about you? And I said, well, I don't know what they say about me. He says, well, I heard you're the best in the business in this town. Is that true? And I said, well, Harvey, I mean, you're putting me on, no, tell me. I said, yeah, I'm the best. So that's what I wanted to hear. So I go in and I'm entertaining Muhammad Ali at this small table with about 8 people sitting around, including our local sports guy, Patrick Royce, and Sid Hartman, a whole bunch of others. And Ali is digging it. He's just digging it. And I mean, I'm nervous. This is Muhammad Ali. He whispers, he leans over and he whispers, he says, you think you're amazing? He says, I'll make a comeback. I said, what? He goes, I'm coming out of retirement. I said, yeah? Who are you going to fight first? He goes, you. I said, how do you think I'll do against you, champ? He goes, with all your jive, I'd take you in 5. So, I mean, those are stories I think about this stuff when I can't fall asleep at night. I mean, and I've had a chance to be with him, I think, 4 separate occasions, and he was so excited always to see me. He loves, like I say, he loves magic. In fact, he performs a little bit of magic when he was training, and he had the kids following him around, and he did a little trick where he made a scarf disappear in his hands, and so he'd probably be at the top of the list for sure, but there've been so many. I mean, like we were talking sports, I've had a chance I know just about all the guys on the Champions Tour on the pro circuit. I've done shows for Fuzzy Zeller, and I've performed for Bernhard Langer, who's arguably the best senior player now, and haven't met Tiger, stood next to him, but performed at a lot of charity events, a lot of nonprofit galas, but Dr. J, Franco Harris, the great New York Yankee, Joe DiMaggio, and of course my friends Paul Molitor and Joe Mauer, and Jack Morris and all the local guys. That's another story. St. Paul baseball, 3 or 4 guys in the Hall of Fame. They grew up within like 2 miles of each other. And Billy Peterson, my coach, coached some of them, and what a legend that dude was in my life and in so many's. But I'm getting off topic here, so I'll.
No, but that was actually one of the questions. I know that Patrick's going to jump in, but if you could just talk for just a minute about growing up in St. Paul in that area with those 3 athletes.
Right.
It is very special. Plus all the other athletes that we have talked off camera about that you grow up with that were great athletes that may not have made it to Major League Baseball level, but were really good. Just tell our audience a little bit
I
about
grew up a half a block from St. Thomas College. My father had gone there, and I lived 2 blocks from St. Mark's Catholic Grade School. That's where I went to grade school. They had this coach named Joe Meyer, a legendary guy who was real strict on fundamentals. So I played baseball and basketball and, got good enough to make the teams. When I got into high school, my sophomore year, I learned about this summer team that played down at Dunning Field, and it was Attucks Brooks and the Oxford Juniors. So I went and tried out at age 16. Our coach, Bill Peterson, who was an ex-Marine, a big, strong dude, he had hair growing out of his collar like this. He had a human turtleneck. And he meets me, right? And he says, "Who are you?" And I say to him, he says, "Can you hit?" I said, "Not really." He says, "What do you mean, not really?" I says, "I'm a glove man." My coach in grade school, Joe Meyer, he says, "You're a glove man, you're not a hitter." And Bill didn't like that answer. He says, let me determine if you're a good hitter. So I go up to the plate, and he's throwing batting practice. I must have hit 10 line drives in a row into the outfield. And he comes up to me and says, "I don't ever want to hear you say you're not a good hitter anymore." I almost cry thinking about the motivation this dude gave kids. I mean, he believed in me. And when an adult believes in a kid, the kid's more likely to believe in themselves. And he believed in me, and he believed in the Winfields. So the belief. And then I became better. And so I learned that when I was teaching, and when I learned that when I was coaching, is that, be honest with kids, tell them what they got to get better at, and then, but believe in them,
Yeah, he's a special guy, absolutely. You talked about some of the celebrities that you've entertained.
Right.
And it's been Muhammad Ali, Kevin Costner, Bob Hope, Arnold Palmer. How nerve-wracking is it when you do a trick in front of some of the greatest entertainers in the world?
I won't lie. The heart beats, you got the lump in your throat, and you're scared. And you have to say to yourself, I'm the expert at what I do and what I'm about to do. And as much as I wish I was as good as they are at what they do, professionally in sports, I'm not, and I never was gonna be. So I found something I could be good at, and so that my whole thing goes back to trust and belief. I said, you got to believe you can do this, and so I would do the first trick or something, and I'd win their approval. And once you get a little bit of approval, now the heat is off, and now you're. First time I showed Jack Nicklaus a trick, it was at a rain delay at Valhalla in '96 at the PGA Championship. I'm in the players' lounge, and announcer Paul Azinger, who was playing at the time, brings me over to Jack, and Jack was a little standoffish at first, but he's eating his lunch right during a rain delay, and I start doing a few tricks, and he's just like looking at me, and then he stops and he wants to go get another plate of food. He says, and he hardly even reacted. He just says, "Don't you go anywhere. I'm going to come back. I got to see some more." So he went and, those are little fun things you remember. About how you met people and how they responded.
We're coming towards the end of the show. We want to see a little bit of magic here too. But one more question: how much time do you spend honing your craft? I mean, practicing in front of a mirror, in front of your cameras, or just you're walking down Grand Avenue and you're saying, "I thought of a new trick."
Yeah, so at the beginning, I took lessons when I was 22 years old from a sleight of hand guy in Minneapolis who was a legendary teacher named Al Schneider. And we had 2-hour lessons, 8 2-hour lessons on a Monday night that summer. I was 22. And I practiced 35 hours on average per each 2-hour lesson. And I crafted a 3-way mirror. One here, one here, one here, so I can see what everybody sees. I put my hands in there. So a lot of time. Now, once you get it down, it's kind of like riding a bike. You can pick it up. But if you want to learn something new, now you got to start over again, and you got to put your time in. So, yeah, I don't play guitar. I wish I could, but I got to imagine it's the same deal, how much time people do. But, you asked me about this. You want to see this?
Absolutely.
All right. I got 6 cards here, Billy, and they're all different. I'll show you in a minute. But give me a number from 1 to 6.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. I will remove the 4th card. These guys you did not select, all right? Now, you would agree this card agrees with one of these cards.
Correct.
All right. Now, your job, since life is nothing but a series of choices, your job is to actually decide when to say stop, and we will compare the two. Your job is to stop me on the card that agrees with this one. Now, the probability is it's still here because there's more. Now, if I went by it, well, we can't succeed. But it's your choice. You know, we're on the clock here too.
Okay.
So
That one.
this one,
Yes.
I can go further.
Oh, right there.
You're comfortable,
I'm comfortable.
folks watching the show. We did not set this up. Of all these cards, you stopped me on this one card, and it happens to be the one card that matches the 10 of spades. Now, being a former math teacher and a problem solver, I know I can feel your brain. Yeah, but you didn't show me the other cards. What if they're all the same, right?
Correct.
Well, they are. The problem is they're all blank. There's nothing here. These cards are all blank. You found the only one that matches.
I love it. I love it.
That's exceptional.
Love it.
Hondo, what magicians blow your mind? I mean,
Say it
you watch,
again?
you know, there must be some magicians that really blow your mind that you look at, you know, the David Blaine's or David Copperfields, you know, that are really brilliant magicians, Penn and
Right.
Teller. That you look at and say, I don't get it. How do they do this?
Happens all the time. I mean, people who have their own, who develop their own style, their own material. I've met Penn and Teller. I was at their first show at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival in the 70s, and they blow my mind. Now, Copperfield's an illusionist, and I'm not an illusionist doing the big stuff. I'm more of a close-up and parlor and business speaker magician, where the magic's big enough to convey the message. But I'm not into floating people and cutting people in half and all that. I mean, you know, my rule is if it doesn't fit in the briefcase or my suitcase, it doesn't go with me. But yeah, I see people all the time, and sometimes I get so blown away, I have to call my peers and say, how did that happen? You know, because we share secrets among ourselves. But the wonder in me still exists. I love to be fooled by something. It's a gas.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
We all do. Billy, great to see you. Hondo,
Thank
what a
you.
pleasure. Thanks for being on Behind
Thank
the Game.
you.
We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Awesome.
It went too fast. It went too fast.
That's a great trick, too. I hope you've got some more with you
I do.
after the show.
Sure,
Good. Terrific.
absolutely.
Hey, and thank all of you for watching Behind the Game, presented by Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. I'm Patrick Klinger, and we'll see you again next month on Behind the Game.